Sales is a numbers game. If your close rate is at a certain level, you know that the more prospects you speak to, the more you'll close and the bigger your commission will be. And this is why sales teams want to talk to as many opportunities as possible. But we've got a different strategy that we teach our clients. We advise them to do what they can to get bad fit prospects out of the sales process so that they're talking to fewer but better prospects. In this episode of Solving Inbound, we're addressing the question, why should I weed out bad fit prospects instead of just convincing them to buy from me? Welcome back to Solving Inbound. I'm John Becker here with Connor Delaney, and we're talking today to our sales folks, friends out there who we're going against some of your core instincts here. You want more opportunities, you want more conversations, more meetings booked, and we're telling you kind of the opposite. You don't actually want that. You want fewer, and you want to get those bad fit prospects out of the sales process early if you can. Am I right, Connor?
You're right. And then to your point too, I don't think everyone's going to love hearing that. And when I think of sales, especially as I was growing into the career that I have now, it was all about volume. It was the more conversations you had, the more important you were at the organization. If you could crank out 200 sales calls, you were doing better than the person cranking out 100. But we've seen that really isn't the case, especially nowadays.
Yeah, and a lot of sales teams, that's one of their core metrics, the number of meetings booked, how big is their pipeline? And so this is a reorientation of thinking about some of those things. But the first truth that I think we all have to acknowledge is that bad fit prospects become unhappy customers. So yes, you could give a great sales pitch. You could convince someone that your solution is right for their needs. But if it isn't, they're less likely to have a good experience. They're more likely to become an unhappy customer. They're not going to recommend you to their colleagues and friends. They're going to be difficult for your services team to deal with, or your customer services team to deal with. So while you might win in the short term, that's going to be a loss in the long term for your company.
Yeah, and not only are they going to be unhappy, they're probably not going to stick around that long. Like, it's going to end up being a lack of value for both sides. They're probably not going to enjoy the work that you do for them. They're probably going to churn. You're going to lose that revenue. You're going to know that you spent so much time trying to just get them in the door with, common promises that we'll hear is like, well, once you get started, you'll change your mind. Like, that rarely, if ever, is the case. And when you hear a salesperson say that, it's probably not a great sign that they're just trying to well, we know that it's going to happen. That's how it always goes. That's not what you're looking for. And again, to your point too, the referral idea is the biggest thing for me. You want to get a review. You want to get someone that's going to be an evangelist for your brand. If they're not happy from the start and then they somehow close the sale with you, they're not likely to tell anyone else about you, at least not in a good light, that is.
Exactly. And so what we advocate for is having fewer conversations that are better conversations with better fit prospects. And we advocate for doing as much education as you can from the marketing team and from the sales team, so that if someone is a bad fit prospect, they know it and you know it as early as possible, and they can opt out of the sales process, not wasting their time or your time or becoming those unhappy customers that we just talked about. So getting those bad fit prospects out of the sales process benefits everyone.
And the beauty of that buyer education, John, is that you don't have to disqualify them. They typically will disqualify themselves. And when a buyer disqualifies themselves from their process, from your process, that doesn't leave a bad taste in their mouth. They just say, yeah, you know what? They weren't the right fit for me. And they might even answer, they weren't the right fit for me right now. And I've seen a lot of customers who have taken it upon themselves to say, I really want to work with this company. I don't fit right now, but what do I need to do in 6 months to be a better fit? and they'll educate themselves with the content that you've created, with the process they've gone through with sales, however far they got, to make it an opportunity for them where they can come back and say, I'm ready to work with you now. And that's the beauty of that buyer education, is they can go do that themselves too. They don't have to, not to say waste, but they don't have to use your sales team's time or even your marketing team's time to figure out what they need to do. They can do it themselves.
Right. But this can only happen if those buyers or those potential buyers have access to the information they need to know if they are a good fit or not. And it's easy to be like, well, we're great for everybody. But that's probably not true. And
most definitely not true.
Most definitely not true. And so giving those prospects the information that they need during the, from marketing, but then also from sales is imperative. And we advocate for something that we've talked about on here before, which is assignment selling, where our sales team gives content. It could be articles or buyer's guides or videos or anything else to prospects ahead of a sales call and says, like, look at this, read this. You're going to know when you read this, either this really resonates with me and I'm ready to move forward, or yeah, it's just not for me. But we ask those prospects to engage with that information before a sales call, actually before each sales call. So before a discovery call, before, later more in-depth calls, as both sides get to know each other better, they have that information at their fingertips that allows them to go in one of those two directions. Yes, let's move forward. I'm serious about this, or no, it's not a good fit for me. And as you said, Connor, that might mean it's not a good fit for me right now, or yeah, that's just not going to fit with what we need. We're going to look elsewhere. And again, everybody's time gets saved.
John, the one thing that comes to mind is that this isn't an excuse for salespeople to say, well, 99% of these people aren't worth my time anyway. I still think that there's an opportunity for, I guess, what you could call the challenger sale, not in reference to the book directly, but it is a good book too. But the idea of like, that doesn't mean that as soon as someone doesn't seem qualified, you should get rid of them. There is worth having conversations. It's worth, again, even just throwing content their way and saying, hey, I want you to read these couple things before, and then let me know if you think a conversation is still worth it. This doesn't mean to just get rid of anybody who doesn't seem like the right fit, because one, you're going to know better than most if there's the opportunity or the characteristics, I guess you could say, that this prospect could actually become a client. That's great. But they might also, it might just be worth your time to have that conversation and see if it opens a door, see what, again, nurture them, see what comes out of it. Don't just disqualify them because right off the bat, it doesn't seem like they're the right fit.
100%. I completely agree that we don't necessarily want to put our prospects into one side or the other. There is that middle ground where someone, after conversation, there's some self-discovery and they become aware that your solution might be a better fit than they thought at first, or they go into the sales process really aware of their problem, but not as aware of or they might think one solution is better for them because they don't know enough. But it all comes back, as we're saying, to buyer education and to treating the conversation like a relationship, which is how you would want to be treated if you were buying. Right. So I think all sales pros out there know those conversations that are just not fruitful. It's pretty clear early on that this is not going to be a fit. This is not going to be a customer. This is not going to be a good use of my time today. So by educating prospects on the front end, you're able to eliminate more of those calls, have better calls, have more calls with better fit prospects. And ultimately that gives you a higher close rate. That gives you what you're after, but also serves your company well.
Without a doubt. Well said, John. Well said.
So for everyone listening, thank you for tuning into this episode of Solving Inbound. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment and a like below. And if you're listening to us through a podcast service, leave a review, leave a thumbs up, leave us some stars. We always enjoy hearing from our audience.